You're personally attacking me again. Say whatever you want, but I'm not going to stand for
brother, you got it wrong.
Say
you were
whatever
preposterously and stupidly wrong. Hey, Alan, you deserve a tall glass of shut-up juice, so can you just shut up for a second?
He arrested and charged 6 journalists with felony rioting. He wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy the to deploy our own troops against George Floyd protesters. These are all things that are actually on the record.
What do we got today? Welcome to the channel, guys. My name's Will. Today I'm going to be reacting to a big showdown from the Democrats on the Piers Morgan show the other day. The context is very, very simple. How did the Democrats lose to the most unpopular presidential candidate in U.S. history for the second time now? First exchange is with Cenk Uygur. Everyone knows who good old Cenk is. He's the over-emotional guy who screams to get his point out. And Alan Lichtman, the guy who predicted Kamala Harris's victory in the 2024 election based off of his key tests that have been right about a bunch of other elections. And then you'll get to hear from good old Harry Sissons, you know, the guy who thinks that Joe Biden could run another 4 years as the president of the United States. But he'll give us his take on why he thinks Kamala Harris lost this election. I'm not going to hold you guys any further. Let's jump right into the video.
I was incredibly critical at the time of the spineless, cowardly Democrats openly and viciously trashing their elected president and their elected nominee right out there in the open. I have never seen that before, and I've studied American politics since the founding, and that tainted any nominee. And they're now taking no responsibility for that. They're blaming everybody else. Until they look in the mirror, the Democratic Party is going to be in trouble. Secondly, why did my keys miss? Because my keys are based upon the proposition that a pragmatic, rational electorate decides whether or not the White House party is governed well enough to get 4 more years. That was exploded this time by a new wave of disinformation that we've never seen before. In addition to the usual sources of disinformation, we had a huge change this time. A 300 billionaire, a guy who's richer than most countries of the world, who controls X, spreading vast disinformation. According to reports, billions upon billions of viewers saw his disinformation. People have a completely distorted view of the economy.
What was the disinformation?
Inflation is going up.
Let me pin you down on that, though. You say Elon Musk was spreading disinformation. Like what?
Yes. He is spreading vast disinformation that's sunk in. Even people who think their own financial situation is pretty good think inflation is going up when it's been cut by 75%, that unemployment
but it's still
is
inflation.
a near high when
it's
it's
still inflation,
near
Professor.
a low.
On that point, see, that's interesting. You would say that's disinformation, but the point is that inflation is still not zero. Therefore, prices are still going up. Therefore, people... The
only way you get inflation to zero is with a recession.
Yeah, but here's my point.
Obviously.
Here's my point. Yeah, but here's my point. Democrats kept telling the American people rather arrogantly, I thought, you know, the economy's in really good shape. Meanwhile, inflation still exists. In other words, prices have continued to go up and up and up, albeit not at the same rate they were going up. But if it wasn't zero, and it wasn't, it was like 2.5% or whatever by the end, that is still inflation. So it's not disinformation to say
the only
Americans
way you
are still
get it
suffering
to
inflation.
Zero is a recession, is deflation. That's ridiculous. Inflation has been cut by 80%, but it's not just inflation that people are wrong about.
But do you accept inflation means prices are still going up? Do you accept prices were still going up?
Of course.
Right, so
they
that's the point.
They always do, unless you have a recession.
That's not disinformation,
that's ridiculous.
Then, is it? By Elon Musk,
and
that
it's
isn't disinformation
about every other aspect of the economy as well. Disinformation about undocumented immigrants, like they're bloodthirsty killers. They are the most law-abiding segment of our society. According to numerous studies, including by the Libertarian Cato Institute, they commit crimes, including violent crimes, less than half of that of Native Americans. And they don't drain our economy. They are the mainstay of the agricultural, construction, personal service, hospitality industries. Studies show you will drive the economy into a recession if you go through large-scale deportation of immigrants, and you will sweep huge numbers of U.S. citizens because all the databases used to identify undocumented immigrants are fundamentally flawed. You can't have a pragmatic electorate under these conditions, and the mainstream media is utterly feeble. It spends 20 times more time on meaningless polls within the margin of error than it does telling truth to power and indicating the consequences of this election.
But it is
it's
okay.
being taken over by billionaires.
Okay, I'm going to come to Cenk. I mean, Cenk, you know, the biggest deporter in American presidential history was Barack Obama, who deported over 3 million people. This idea that Trump is going to become, you know, some outlier in terms of mass deportation. The great mass deporter was actually a Democrat president, Obama, by a long way, by the way. So this idea of like disinformation, I think some of it was disinformation, but it's, you know, I think the idea that this election was only won through right-wing disinformation, I'm afraid, I view that as a total delusion by the Democrats. Again.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm sorry, but I totally disagree with Juan and Professor Lichtman. Don't blame the voters. I think, look, we could get into this discussion, but Juan, I think you're blaming the voters. I think that's a terrible idea. Look, I debated Professor Lichtman before. I told him his theories about the keys were absurd. I was right. He was wrong. I said he'd lose his keys.
No, you were
Couldn't
not
find
right,
him before
and I
the
was
election.
not wrong. And that's a cheap shot, and I won't stand for it.
Well, who won, brother?
You should not be
Who
taking
won?
cheap
Who
shots
won?
at me.
Who won?
You want to make your
you
point,
live
make your
in
point.
a total
Don't make
world
it
of denial.
I read your own followers' comments, and they all trashed you, every one of them, and supported me.
Yeah,
so quiet with your personal attacks.
Come find out again.
Make whatever point you want. Don't
Look,
make it personal.
You don't know anything. You don't know anything.
You attacked me personally.
You're so deluded.
Oh, right. I've only been a professor for 51 years.
On this program, I've never been able to finish a thought.
How many books have you published? No, because you're personally attacking me again. Say whatever you want, but I'm not going to stand for
brother,
personal
you got it wrong.
Say
you were
whatever you want.
preposterously and stupidly wrong. So, okay, all right. Can I just finish a goddamn thought ever on this show?
No, not if you're personally. I admitted I was wrong. I don't need you to call me stupid.
Okay.
Can I just say, it's great to see you Democrats all getting along so well.
Who taught you manners?
It's lovely to see a post-election harmony as you all come together again.
We're just one right now.
Hey, Alan, you deserve a tall glass of shut-up juice, so can you just shut up for a second? And let someone who knows what they're doing.
You're so right, Piers. You're so right. We're so unified right now.
You want, I will not sit here and stand for personal attacks, for blasphemy against me. You don't need to do that. You don't boost
blasphemy
your
against you? Who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser? Okay, can I just give the correct answer for once? Okay, here we go. So, guys, you're blaming disinformation. There was disinformation. There was the cats and the dogs nonsense. The points you're making about undocumented immigrants, I agree with, Alan, okay? But that didn't cost the election. The main disinformation was about how the election was going to be rigged. And it wasn't rigged. It was dumb. They won easily. There was no need for that disinformation. You guys are missing the whole point. The people who are at fault are not other people. It is the candidate, Kamala Harris, the previous candidate, Joe Biden, Democratic Party, Democratic leadership. You guys don't want to admit that they're the problem. They're the cancer in the Democratic Party. So you blindly lash out at the voters, at information, at social media, and you want to shut down anyone who disagrees with you. That's not the correct answer. There are three wings of the Democratic Party. There's the establishment wing that the great majority, almost everyone on television supports and kisses the ass of and does propaganda for. That wing has led to disaster. They lost to Donald Trump twice, nearly lost to him 3 times. And then the other wing is called the progressive wing, but those are two different sets of people. In the progressive, so-called progressive wing, what you have is the identitarian left, the people who do what the right wing would call woke politics and identity politics, and that is disastrous. That's what the trans ad was at the end, and it cost us. The most popular part of the Democratic Party is the populist left. That is the Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign. That part says, let's do super popular economic proposals like paid family leave, higher minimum wage, universal health care, public option. Let's do all of these things. And the establishment goes, no, our corporations don't want that. Our donors don't want that. So we'll just do identity politics. And maybe identity politics will unite the left. But it didn't. Identity politics led to disaster. It was a poison within the Democratic Party, used ironically by the establishment Democrats because they didn't want to talk about popular proposals that we have because their donors hate those proposals.
Okay, let me bring in Harry. Now, Harry, you tweeted or posted on X on November the 6th. Kamala Harris's speech was amazing, graceful, strong, hit the right tone. She's a fantastic leader and a great role model. No idea how she lost to Trump. You're a bright young guy, Harry. I've interviewed you several times. Right? You know why she lost. And that speech, in a way, to me, was the perfect illustration. She basically said nothing. She talked about billions of stars and the moonlight and shining lights and all that. There was nothing there. There was no meat on the bone, no substance. And that was her problem throughout the whole campaign. She had 100 days to show America, here's how I'm going to fix all your problems. Instead, she did the Hillary Clinton playbook. After promising us joy and sunshine, immediately pivoted to Trump's a Nazi, they're all fascists, they're all disgusting. And by the way, here are all my rich, famous entertainment friends who are all going to surround themselves on me on stages. Didn't work for Hillary, didn't work for Kamala. And at some point, young guys like you who are the future of the Democrat Party, you've got to wake up and smell the cappuccino. You need a candidate that can resonate. I mean, Cenk's right. The Democrat candidate who has most resonated with the public was Bernie Sanders, right? You'd have done better with him running in this election. But you guys don't see it that way, do you?
Well, I think that since the election happened and sitting with it for a couple weeks, I know why Kamala Harris lost. You know, I think that what I said was premature. And I think it's a combination of what all the gentlemen around me are saying. I think it's like a middle ground in life, which I think is often the case, which is I think Professor Lichtman is right that it was a lot of disinformation pushed by a lot of bad actors in the right wing. But I think that Cenk and the gentleman beside me
hang on, Harry, there was disinformation from the left as well. When you keep calling him a Nazi...
But Piers, it's not to the same, it's not to the same level.
When you keep calling Donald Trump a Nazi and a fascist and all these things, and his supporters, Nazi sympathizers...
It was his own
all that is total disinformation.
All right, so we've got a lot to unpack right here. I mean, I never thought I'd see the day where Cenk Uygur is getting red-pilled in real time. I mean, he is the only sane one to say that the elitist Democrats are the ones who are at fault for the outcome of this 2024 election. Why, you might ask? Well, for starters, they're the same elite Democrats who didn't trust the voters with their own vote. Let's run through the timeline. Joe ran in the primary and got 14 million votes from that. Then the Democrats pushed for the early debate with Trump and Joe directly after the primary, and we all know how that debate went for Joe Biden's poll numbers. Then a short time after the assassination attempt, he drops out after saying continuously he was in it to win it and he was not going to unexpectedly drop out. And with that, it leads a normal person like myself to believe that someone forced Joe Biden into a room and said, either we're going to invoke the 25th Amendment on you or you can step out on your own accord.
I forgot to mention that the Democrat elites then took the opportunity to install Kamala Harris as the president-elect, pretty much snubbing the voters out of a say and discrediting qualified candidates that would have been way better than anyone involved with the Biden-Harris administration.
And by the establishment left, I mean people like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the Obamas, potentially Kamala Harris. People like that basically forced Joe into the room, which Joe has admitted that they did, and said, to put it lightly, get out. To Harry's point about the disinformation, it's very funny to me. He says that disinformation isn't on the same level as Trump's campaign. For instance, on Trump's side, he put out the cats and the dogs. No one was more mad than me after I heard Trump say they're eating the cats and they're eating the dogs. Not because people from Springfield actually do have those types of personal stories, and not to mention the Ducks stories about them getting taken from the park is definitely true. But there's other issues he could have brought up specifically relating to Springfield, Ohio that would have hit home way more and could have been way easier backed up with facts. Like the increase in crime in Springfield since the Haitians had shown up, the exacerbation of the welfare system by the immigrants, the increased costs in insurances, which is solely due to the increase in car crashes, multiple hour wait times, long lines at government buildings like the DMVs, just so many other problems that would have been greatly highlighted and hit home way more than just they're eating the cats and they're eating the dogs. But Harry wants to act like the Democrats aren't the same party that misquoted Donald Trump when he was talking about a bloodbath. And the Democrat anchors had quite literally acted like they've never heard the word bloodbath being used in politics. How about the Trump abortion bans? He's clearly stated plenty of times that he does have the exceptions for the life of the mother, the grape, and the incest. How about the MSG rally that was related to being a Nazi rally? How about the suckers and losers comment? How about John Kelly's new comments? I mean, we really could go on for the unseeable future. They do have to love it though when Piers Morgan says, "You guys are just getting along so well." Like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Cenk is the voice of reason on this specific subject. Let's look at clip 2.
Yeah, so look, I'm going to address what Juan's saying too. But first, Harry, I know that the same policy was under Donald Trump, but that's not disinformation. That's for our candidate to go out there and clarify that and to fight back and to make her case. But she refused to make her case. She barely did any interviews. They were all incredibly structured to protect her fragile ego. All she did was talking points. Donald Trump's out there, sometimes like a maniac, but a lot of times looking like a real person at McDonald's and with a garbage truck. And our side goes, "Oh, that's terrible." No, it's not terrible. Those are great photo ops.
It was brilliant.
When our guy is a corporate talking robot, that is not helpful. We are misdiagnosing the case here. So when on these identity
jump in
issues,
here.
the Republicans set traps. No, hold on. The Republicans set traps for us. So the great majority of the country is in favor of trans rights, and I'm 100% in favor of trans rights, and I bet you that the entire panel, including Piers, says that as well.
Yeah.
But when you go beyond rights and you say, hey, they dug and dug, they tried to find, hey, how about banning them from the military? Trump tried that in the beginning. It wasn't popular. Banning them from bathrooms, not popular. But they dug until they got to sports, and that was winning ground for them. And what I said is, guys, get out of there. It's a trap. You don't have to fight on that. You're falling into their trap. And what happened, as Piers can attest to, is everyone else on the left screamed, transphobe, fascist, Nazi. Let's dig in on our least popular position. That was terrible politics.
Totally agree with
and
that.
Juan, I love you, brother, but it ain't about race. It ain't about race.
You know what?
Latino men
Cenk-
didn't vote for. Hold on. Latino men didn't vote for Donald Trump because all of a sudden they like white people or orange people. They voted for him based on economic issues. Democrats only think in terms of identity, but that's not working anymore. The number one identity people care about is not Latino, black, or white. It's class. Are you going to do something for the average man, or are you going to sit there and play identity politics so you avoid the more important questions that your donors don't want to talk about that actually helps the average guy, like paid family leave and higher wages?
Okay, Professor Lichtman.
I don't get it, Cenk. I don't get it. The reality is, like, Bill Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Barack Obama, they stood up for Obamacare. They stood up for fair pay. These are populist issues at the heart of the Democratic Party. You go after the Democratic Party donors and the establishment Democrats stood for those issues, brought them to the table, and won. And Democrats, if you look at what Joe Biden did in terms of bailing people out during the virus and saying that we have to have infrastructure and building, that helped working people in this country. But a lot of lies were told about that history.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, Professor, I know you've got to leave us, so you wanted to jump in there.
Yeah. First of all, let me add a quick fact. There was no massive switch of black voters to Donald Trump. Donald Trump got 13% of the black vote, 11% the last time. That's 2% of a very small segment of voters. So that's one of the big myths of this election. Second big myth is that hindsight is 20/20. We have a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks who, after the fact, are telling us what Harris should and should not have done. And half of them are saying she lost because she was too progressive. She was too open to the charge of being a radical, a socialist. The other half have said, of course, she lost because she wasn't progressive enough. We heard that from Cenk today. It's all sports talk radio without the entertainment. There is no way to know after the fact what she should or should not have done. If she had only done this or that, it would have made a difference. That's just hot air with absolutely no proof. The difference that I bring to the table is a track record of successful prediction based upon how American presidential elections have previously worked as pragmatic decision-making on whether or not the White House party has governed well enough. And then my analysis is based upon what's changed, what's shattered the pattern of 160 years of history. So I have a base for my analysis. I'm not just doing Monday morning quarterbacking. Cenk, you need to learn some manners. Your act is getting really thin.
I mean, brother, I said what was going to go wrong. It did go wrong. I was right. You were wrong in this election spectacularly so with your so-called keys. And now you come and tell us not the Monday morning
unlike you, I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong.
Are you ever going to learn the lessons?
Can I just ask, hang on. Just ask, for those who have no idea what the key thing is all about, why are you flashing keys?
Okay, because this brother said that he had these keys and they were going to determine the outcome of the election, and all the keys were rigged in favor of incumbents. And I tried to explain to him, no, there are things outside of the keys. We literally had a debate, and I asked him, what if Joe Biden, this was back when he was defending Joe Biden, which now seems unconscionable, that what if Biden came and punched a baby every single day? Would your keys still hold? And he said yes. Okay, well, then you're an unreasonable person.
I was right.
But what I'm most worried about is not the past,
Let me
it's the
explain
future.
Why. I was right.
I mean, listen to him.
About Biden.
You have no idea how absurd you sound. Okay, but guys, the most important thing is not between me and Professor Lichtman. God bless you, brother. I know you did a lifetime's worth of work, and I feel a little bit bad about it. The reason I'm saying it is not to rub it in now. It's because I'm worried that in the next primary, you're going to tell people to vote for the establishment Democrat. That all of you on this panel are going to go, oh no, vote for the corporate robot, vote for the corporate robot. And that's going to destroy this party. That's why I'm fighting back so aggressively.
Holy cow. I'm almost at a loss for words. Referencing Joe Biden punching a baby in the face is just to show the extreme argument against the keys. But it really does illustrate the silliness of the left's thought processes. And I know Harry loves Joe Biden so much, but you gotta be able to call a spade a spade. He's clearly not capable of running the president's seat, and he isn't at the moment either. And what is it that they like to say? Something like "Ma democracy," you know, Donald Trump's the threat to democracy, and yet they don't even know who's running the president's seat right now. On the outside, it can be Joe Biden, but are you really willing to say confidently that he is making the big name decisions behind closed doors? No. That's why Harry doesn't bet on politics, because he knows he's lying. And I also want to take a second to debunk what Alan Lichtman said about the black voters. Looking at it right now, Harris appears to have won 80% of the black vote. It's a drop of 10 percentage points compared with 2020 when the current president Joe Biden won 9 of 10 black votes. Trump, who won 20% of the black vote this time according to the exit poll, he had won 13% in the community's vote in 2020 and 8% in 2016. Which in itself was the highest level of support by black voters for any Republican since George W. Bush. It's just so funny hearing that she lost the campaign because of misinformation. Then goes to say with his chest, mind you, says that Trump only gained 1% of the black vote. Yeah, retirement's calling your name, buddy. Anyways, let's look at the last clip here and we'll break it down afterwards.
Warning for a long time to liberals, speaking as a liberal himself, and I'm pretty much where he is politically, I think. I feel the same way. And I know you've been keen to say, look, Kamala didn't mention any of these woke issues or whatever, but she's very much associated with a lot of those woke issues. She's certainly voted in line with a lot of the more progressive stuff, like allowing transgender athletes in women's sport and so on. So she's seen to be a progressive who then moved rapidly to the center when she got the nomination, and it was all too much of a screech for people, probably on both sides. But this whole woke ideology, I don't mean the original woke ideology of raising awareness for racial and social injustice. I mean the way it's become a kind of new form of fascism, where the far left just basically want to cancel, shame, and humiliate absolutely anybody who disagrees with them about anything. Do you accept that has become a problem, a stick to beat the party with, which actually really damages them electorally?
No, I think Kamala ran basically the platonic ideal of a non-woke Democratic campaign. She never mentioned race. She never mentioned gender. She never mentioned trans people. She never mentioned pronouns or Latinx or cancel culture. She repeatedly stressed that she was going to represent all Americans. She ran to the right on the issue of the border. She talked about owning a gun. She ran on freedom and patriotism. And so when you put all that stuff together, I simply don't know what people are talking about when they say she's
they're talking about her record.
Those things at all.
Hang on. They're talking about her record as vice president of the Biden administration, where they never stopped talking about this stuff for nearly 4 years. So you can pretend when you get the nomination, whoa, I'm a centrist and I'm a gun-toting Rambo, by the way, as well, to all you Second Amendment people. But actually, if you judge her on what she said and did in 4 years, she was a progressive left person. And to pretend otherwise is to just ignore what went on in that period.
What I'm much more concerned about is not Democrats being woke or Democrats censoring speech. I'm much more concerned about Trump's record on those things. So, for example, Trump said he wants to punish flag burning with a year in jail. That's against the First Amendment. He sued CNN for $475 million for calling election denialism the big lie. Before he was president, he sued Bill Maher for $5 million over a joke. He said he wants to open up the libel laws. He called for jailing journalists who report on the Supreme Court abortion ruling early before the decision.
How many of those things did he do in his first term?
Pro-Palestine protesters.
How many of those things did he actually do in his first term? Because it seems to me another problem, and he does this brilliantly, by the way, with the left. He sucks you in because he just shoots them a hip and he says stuff that crosses his mind or whatever. And rather than pick him off on stuff he actually does, you all go completely nuts every time he opens his mouth and says something a bit crazy. And if I was advising the Democrats, I'd be like, stop doing this. You're literally playing into his trap every time you do this. Just pick him off on the stuff he actually does. Then you got a better chance.
All right, I'll do that. Here, ready? He gag ordered the EPA from telling the truth on climate change. That's deeply anti-free speech. He arrested and charged 6 journalists with felony rioting. He did not pardon Assange. He did not pardon Snowden. He did not pardon Daniel Hale. He wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy the U.S. to deploy our own troops against George Floyd protesters. These are all things that are actually on the record, things he actually did. And the thing that I find incredibly frustrating is that nobody talks about it. Trump magically gets a pass for things he actually did.
He doesn't get
Democrats
a pass.
Get held to a super high standard.
Come on, he doesn't get a pass.
How many times have you heard people say those things I just told you?
Trump has had...
Wait.
Hang on. Let me answer you.
When was the last time you heard that?
Trump has had the most unrelentingly hostile media from a mainstream media that is largely staffed by liberals. We know this because of the way they all go nuts when their paper wouldn't come out and endorse Kamala and all resign, so they reveal their true colours. Cable news the same, MSNBC, CNN, you can fire a harpoon around their newsrooms and you wouldn't hit a conservative, right? So let's just get real about the way mainstream media is made up. I've worked in it. And there are very few conservatives. And that is part of the problem as well. And I just think that ultimately, if the Democrats are going to try and make themselves electable, they've got to move wholesale on now to a far more effective way of campaigning. And it can't just be every time Donald Trump speaks, mass hysteria, shaving your head, going on TikTok and posting videos of yourself screaming and saying you'll never have sex with a Trump supporter again. All this stuff is insane.
How about just telling the truth? Wait. How about just telling the truth? That's a radical idea, right? When was the last time you heard that Trump arrested and charged 6 journalists with felony rioting? Who talked about that? Did CNN talk about that? Did MSNBC talk about that? Did you talk about that? Nobody talks about it. And the fact of the matter is Trump attacks Democrats 4 times as hard as they attack him.
Yeah.
So if anything, the lesson to take away is the opposite. Democrats should get more arrogant, they should get more aggressive, and they should tell the truth more.
Come on, Kyle. You know that would be utter suicide.
That's the
Piers brings up a very valid point. That is, make arguments against things that he has done action-wise. And what does he say for most of these points?
He did not pardon. He wanted to...
I'm going to take a few points and we'll give it a little bit of context. On the story about the 6 arrested reporters charged with felony rioting, first I'd like to say I wasn't aware Trump was a law enforcement officer with a gun and a badge and some handcuffs who slapped them on the wrists of these 6 quote-unquote reporters. And doing a little bit of light research, what do you know, that did not happen. These arrests were made on Inauguration Day in 2017. So it's very bad faith to even say that Trump did it and Trump arrested these people when he was getting sworn into the presidency this same day. But nonetheless, as you guys can see, there were even a few to be questioned if they were reporters or not. And one of the 6 posted on Twitter admitting that they were a part of a social group that was there to protest. But obviously that's not against the law, and that's why the case was dropped, I think, merely 6 or 7 days later. To his second point, he said that Trump wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act on the BLM rioters/protesters. I'm actually very glad you brought up this topic. Donald Trump never wanted to even invoke the Insurrection Act on these BLM rioters and protesters. But if you're asking, well, why would even the topic be brought up? Why would they be bringing up the Insurrection Act? So let's look back as to why the Insurrection Act was even brought up to be used against these people. Oh, that's right. The violent protests in Washington, D.C. were so bad and out of control that the president had to be taken down to his bunker for safety, while 60-plus Secret Service agents were being assaulted and getting injured and on red alert for the president's safety. It just so happens that the mayor of D.C. actually approved the National Guard to be there that day rather than when they didn't do it on January 6th. And you really want to cherry pick and say, how dare he, after he was taken to a bunker because the riots got so out of hand that they were actually scared for the president's life. I'm not one for throwing insults, but these people are so ignorant that they don't even expect you to look up these quotes that they are giving us. And to one point that I will concede on a bit is the case where Donald Trump said that there should be punishments for burning the American flag. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think that that is a form of free speech. I may disagree with it, but it's free speech. But I think it's still wrong to say that he wants to enact on this particular issue, considering that this tweet was from 2016. So I'd like to know, where are the people that were locked up because they were burning flags? He wants to make the case that Donald Trump so easily got these 6 reporters arrested. I'm assuming that he would have been able to actually arrest the people who were burning the flags, correct? See how silly it sounds? But to Piers's point, I mean, this is the same guy that loves to shoot off at the hip, and he doesn't think twice about it, and it can be to his detriment or to his benefit. It just depends on what the particular subject is. But nonetheless, I think we're going to leave it off on there. That's going to be the end of the video, guys. I hope you guys learned something new to at least rebut some of the left's terrible talking points that you can just whip it out like a 6-shooter and just bop, 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 bop. Like I said, thank you guys for watching, and let me know what you guys want me to react to next. This is actually my first reaction video, so let me know if you guys want more content like this. If you guys want to suggest any videos for me, I would happily take that. I really do like the discourse when it comes to politics, because I think that there are a lot of people out there that don't know what they're talking about. So, but anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I appreciate your viewership. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you very much.